The new Star Trek title feels somewhat like a mobile game, and that's the clearest sign yet that space games, in my opinion, are stuck. Now, in the next 10 minutes, I'll show you why Star Trek Voyager Across the Unknown isn't just a demo. It really is, I do feel, a symptom of what's going on within the entire genre. Also, a very quick note here, sorry about the audio quality, I'm using different equipment. My regular mic has completely failed, so I'm using a cheaper alternative for the moment. But we should be back to regular quality in a couple of videos, so please do stick with me meanwhile. Star Trek Voyager then, Across the Unknown, is a game that was announced not too long ago. It was made available as a demo on Steam Next Fest, and many of you out there have probably tried it. I've tried it myself, and I've got to admit it's not at all what I was expecting. Now, what it feels like is a mobile game, and I'll get into my reasoning for that in just a moment. And to be perfectly clear, this is not a mobile title, it is a full PC release. But it's important not to go too hard on this, because after all, this is a Steam Next Fest demo, and many companies, many people view those demos as concepts, rather than full-on game demos. Nevertheless, there's plenty enough here to really give us a feel for what Daedalic are aiming for as developers of this game. So the general premise is that, of course, it follows the TV series. You are the captain of the USS Voyager, which has found itself lost and abandoned in the Delta Quadrant, 70,000 light years away from home, and no easy way to return. In terms of gameplay, that means you use your ship to scan planets and other resources and anomalies you come across. You collect some resources, you repair systems on board your ship, you assign crew, and you repeat. There's also away missions here and various different choices. The choices are important because this is a basic premise of the game, perhaps one of the foundational elements. The idea of what if. What if things didn't quite pan out in the way they did in the TV show? What if Captain Janeway made very different decisions, and you as the player get the opportunity to actually try that out? A lot of the interactions, as you can see on the screen right here, take place on board the bridge of the USS Voyager, and that's simply text-based communications between the various different characters. In a demo, there's no voice acting, you're going to have to read all of the dialogue here. And I don't really want to comment on that because I don't know whether or not Daedalic are going to be hiring voice actors in the future, and whether or not they're going to have the original cast. My suspicion is they're not going to be having the original cast, but the information out there seems to be very, very unclear. And if there is any information out there on this, then please let me know in the comment section below, because I'd love to hear about it. The situation is also very much the same when it comes to the music. There doesn't appear to be any officially licensed Star Trek music in the demo so far, and the iconic Voyager soundtrack theme title is definitely not present within the demo. At any rate, as I was pointing out, much of the dialogue takes place on board the bridge of the Voyager itself. And yes, here you'll get to interact with various different characters, whether that's Paris, Kim, or Janeway herself, or even Commander Chakotay. You'll be able to talk with all of these people, as well as make decisions on how you want to proceed and progress. Controlling the Voyager itself takes place on a type of isometric map. You basically click on the planets and the locations you want the ship to move to, and it will then do so. You can scan planets here, scan shipwrecks, and other such things. And then you have the away team missions. Now these take place entirely within the UI. You won't be controlling any characters directly. Instead, what you get are screenshots of the characters within their environment that's being described, and then some text dialogue letting you know what's happening in that environment, whether it's interactions and discussions with the characters that your crew have met, or whether it's simply a description of some tragedy or some event that's occurring, and then you'll need to choose your course of action. So this might be approaching a group of Curzon here, and you can then state whether you want to approach them with a bit of hostility, a little bit of aggression to make your presence felt, or whether you want to have a bit more of a diplomatic approach. Some decisions come with a bit of gambling. You can see the green bar here. The arrow moves side to side, giving you the odds on where it's going to land. If it lands in the red, you're going to fail and have a negative consequence. If it lands in the green, you're going to do okay, and this is what determines the outcome of your decisions. And then the other part of the game, which many people may find interesting, is the management of the Voyager itself. Now you do this from a sort of blueprint perspective of the ship, a side-on view, a cutaway, where you can see all the rooms on board the Voyager, and you can then enable some of these. Some of them are going to need repairing, some of them will need upgrading, and some of them are completely damaged due to the way the Voyager arrived in the Delta Quadrant. And yeah, here you'll need to then repair those particular rooms. All of these different activities require resources which you can collect from the map by scanning and doing a few different other activities. You can also assign a crew here to the rooms to give them a buff or some type of bonus. So beyond that, I don't want to talk about the game too specifically at the moment because, like I say, this is a demo and it feels very much like a concept of a demo, and I really hope that is the case because if not, then this is going to be pretty shallow. It does need a lot more work. As a concept, it's pretty good. It has a good foundation, and if Daedalic are going to put quite a bit more time and effort into this, then well, what they've got here is a good foundation. But if this is closing in on a final release, then we could potentially be in for a bit of a trouble here. And you may all have noticed some of why I feel that way just by simply watching the footage. There's no real layers of simulation going on here. Resources and repairs, for example, feel like counters, not emergent systems, and you just get this bit of gambling going on here and there when it comes to decisions. Now, at this point, I could give you a deep analysis on the demo, but I don't want to do that. I just want to give you the takeaway of this concept. For now, it has a lot of potential, but it's also lacking a lot of polish, and it is very, very repetitive. In other words, it's not a bad game by any means. It has a lot of potential, but it really does need to live up to that potential. And with that in mind, I want to take a step back and really talk about the point I made right at the start of the video. This, to me, is symptomatic of what is going on with the space game genre as a whole here in 2025. How often have we heard about a space game that it has potential, but just needs to live up to that potential? It's a repeating theme that we see from the biggest titles within the genre, all the way to the mid-sized titles, all the way down to the newly minted indie games. All across the board, they are huge potential in pretty much every title, yet many of them are still fairly superficial, they're fairly basic, and by all means they're very repetitive. Also, the fact that this is a Star Trek game really allows us to look at this from another angle as well, and that is audience loyalty. Whilst it's not an understatement to say that Star Trek has ebbed and flowed over the years, it still does have a core loyal audience, and many TV shows, many books and all that lot really have played to this. And they've played to it so much that they've been able to release things of a very lackluster quality, yet still do relatively well in terms of audience interest. And I really do feel that that is yet another parallel with the space game genre as a whole. Space games do have a very dedicated and loyal audience. Almost over the years this has started to shrink thanks to the failures of Starfield and Kerbal Space Program 2, the problems with Elite Dangerous Odyssey back a few years ago, as well as the ongoing troubles that Star Citizen seems to still have. Yet, despite all those problems, there's still a very dedicated core audience that sticks around for all the new space games, regardless of what they might be like. In fact, they're often hooked in by the potential because, we all know, many of these space games do have massive potential. And it also means, unfortunately, that for now at least, many space game developers are not really taking the big risks. They're favouring user experience first as a game, some very simple first design gameplay loop that ultimately dominates the title. And it's very rare to have someone who's willing to bet big. When you do, you have some very nice popular titles such as Spaceborne 2, for example. An indie title that is trying to be a little bit of everything and doing a very good job of that. Ultimately then, my takeaway point here is that regardless of whether we're talking about Star Trek Voyager Across the Unknown or the space game genre at large, it seems the same fundamental points can be made. And that is, right now there's very little options, there's very little choice, and what choice there is fairly repetitive, fairly bland, but still has a huge amount of potential, and therefore requires the developers to really kick up a gear and to take the products where they need to go. Whether or not that's going to be the case for Star Trek Voyager, we'll have to see. Like I say, there are some signs here that it is going to be a pretty good title, but ultimately we're going to have to wait and see how this all pans out. And you know what? I kind of feel that the same is true for the genre as well. The next few years, the next few months perhaps, are going to be really indicative of where things are heading. Please do let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comments section below, because I'd love to hear your take. Also, one more apology here for the relatively poor sound quality this video. Hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll get it fixed for the next video. There's another video on screen right here if you want to check that one out. Take care. I'll catch you next time.